So this is a Ryobi P3310. It's an 18-volt cordless fan. And they might call this a work fan or a shop fan. I mean, it's just basically a fan. It is a little bit heavier duty than, let's say, just some cheaper household type stuff. It's not as powerful as, let's say, a household box fan you can get for 20 bucks over at Kmart, Walmart, Home Depot, whatever. It's also not that cheap because it's pretty heavy duty plastic. All this stuff here, all these little ribs that you'll see on here are solid. It's got a lot of reinforcement in this thing. It's made to be bounced around and thrown around. It's got a lot of adjustments here. It runs off of the 18-volt 1+ battery system, which we're all pretty familiar with on the Ryobi tools. Here in the United States, it's basically the store brand for Home Depot, but you can still get a lot of that stuff at Amazon.com. I understand this stuff is pretty popular in the UK and Australia. It's also popular in Asia. I don't know if this item is available in a UK or Australian or Asian market, but it's sold here in the United States at Home Depot. The fan is advertised, has a little advertisement right on it. It says it gets 10 hours of runtime. That's on the low setting with the P105 high capacity batteries. With the smaller lithium ion batteries, realistically on the high setting I get hour and a half, 2 hours. That's still really good. I can hot swap batteries with the solar charger and recharge batteries at a faster rate than I'm using them in the fan. And that means that I can still have the fan going all the time. And as long as I have enough batteries, the fan's going all the time, I change the battery out when it goes down, and I still have batteries left over to use in my power tools. It also means that I would have batteries left over to use in the lanterns like this one. And this thing goes a long time on one of these even on one of these smaller batteries. On the big P105 battery, I can go all night on one battery easily. And so as a camping set, this isn't a bad way to go. Now when people look at fans, they think, oh yeah, we can use a fan to cool things off. Here's the thing to understand: if you're doing a lot of off-grid work, off-grid living, or anything that's going to involve using heaters that is in an enclosed place, but it's not a full forced air heating system, understand that in a house, part of your heating system is whatever heats up your air, whether it's a furnace or a steam heater or something like that. But if the other part of what's going on with most of that stuff is something forces the air. So a lot of people have a little wood-burning stove, improvised wood-burning stove in a small space, and think, oh yeah, it eventually warms everything up. Realize that if you stick a fan behind it, then you're going to get a whole lot warmer, a whole lot faster, and you're going to be a lot more efficient with the heat you're producing because it circulates the air around and really helps overcome some of those little drafts that you're going to get in a cabin or a tent that they just are unavoidable, especially in a tent. But it helps overcome that because it's going to circulate that warm air around. And it does so without doing anything that would consume the oxygen in there. So you're not having to run any other gasoline or burn anything to get that heat circulating around. So even if you bring in something really warm to the tent, put the fan in front of it, you can circulate that around. It's fully adjustable. We've got some interesting mounting options on this too. There's these little notches that allow it to be hung from a string. Now, the way it balances, it's not going to go straight up and down, but you can rotate this a lot to get a little movement on there. And then to get a relatively straight mount, we also have a little flip-up hook on this end. So you can use either the double-ended one here or the little flip-up one here. There's also some screw holes here that you could use to screw this onto a flat surface. Here's where there's a little bit of a design fault in this thing. If you flip all this back and you screw this onto a flat surface, you're not going to be able to reach that battery very well to get that battery on and off. So it's a little bit of a design fault. You would not want to use these two screw holes unless there's it's just a peg. On these, you could run a couple of screws or nails and hang this on a screw or a nail. On these, you still got to be able to take this thing off in order to reach that battery, because if we're trying to reach it like this when it's up against something, it can be tricky, okay? You can do it, but it's tricky. And what I'm running into is that the batteries, for some reason, aren't going to go when it's tight. I've tried it with a few different batteries. So if you mount that, you screw it down to a surface. On these two, it's a totally flat surface. You can reach it, but you're gonna have a little problem getting into the bottom side, because really the way to get this is to get the thumb around the other end and pry that battery out of there. And I'm not gonna call it a total design fault, because you can do it, but it's just one of the things you gotta understand about these things. But you can wall mount these, and as long as it's something where there's like a little hook or something, you pop it on and pop it off. A lot of adjustment there, very heavy duty, good piece of gear. Would I buy one of these as a standalone unit, knowing that I've got to spend $90 on a pair of batteries? I don't think I would, but if you're already into the OnePlus tool system, it's a hell of a good addition. The other thing is, it gives your OnePlus tool system, especially when you start getting the fan and the lantern, it gives your OnePlus tool system the versatility of being used as a camping system. And there's a lot of really good stuff that uses this battery. And I think in the future, you're going to have D-size batteries and C-size batteries. And then people are going to know that, oh yeah, high-powered 18-volt batteries, this is the way you go. They're not fighting too hard on other people that make compatible battery systems. There's a new one I'm going to be reviewing here in a little bit that does a belt pack. It's a larger battery and it runs a cord to an adapter. But the P3310 fan, good heavy-duty stuff. It's expensive for the size and the capacity, but you got to realize part of what you're paying for is the fact that this is a pretty heavy-duty item, and it's compatible with their system. I know they're making a high profit on it. Sometimes you just got to live with that fact. And the only other warning I would give on this is, if you keep this in a toolbox with other stuff, you got to look out for junk falling in through the grid. Because if stuff gets inside of there and you can't get it back out, it's a hassle. This thing is not easy to take apart. So if little screws or bolts or something falls into there, you may have a problem getting it back out. So for storage, you want to think about maybe just wrapping this in some cloth or a bag or something to keep junk from getting in there. As far as water goes, it's not water resistant or submersible, but if you leave this thing out in the rain, I don't think it's the end of the world. There's nothing on this that's advertised as being heavily outdoor, but I had a little experience with this thing, and that it was in a damp environment and didn't seem to have any ill effects. I've used it for a few months now, off and on, and it's been a pretty good piece of gear. It's not bad for that. I don't think you're going to have any major problem if you happen to leave this thing in the rain. If the batteries get wet, it can reduce their lifespan. But the vulnerable point on the Ryobi battery is this little vent here, because these batteries can heat up. They have to ventilate them. But they're not as bad as some of the other brands that are just plain dead as soon as they've gotten some water. These can get a little buggy. This one got some paint in it and it's been a little buggy. But as far as water getting on the fan itself, realize that if you have it set in its normal position, it even kind of protects a lot of the battery from getting water, as long as it's not really getting dumped on hard. But that's the Ryobi P3310 cordless fan.